Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Two Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. Two easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. I'm so excited today. I'm welcoming back a good friend of the podcast, author, entrepreneur, Neil Seeman. So welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Mike. It's a great pleasure to be back with you today. Thank you.
I always love the return visits. I don't get very many of them. So when somebody comes back, I'm like, first one must have went good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that first one. The takeaway for me was here is a guy who thinks he stumbled into success, but demonstrates a tenacity and an agility and a superpower that you're probably not even aware you have.
Thank you for repeating that, because we talked a little bit about that off camera, and I told you, I was like, I'm going to put that in my pitch deck. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can cite me there. It's true, too.
Yeah, I re-listened to our interview this morning. I was watching a couple of my grandkids, so I re-listened to our interview. I really enjoyed that conversation. It reminded me that was a pretty good interview. We had a good time.
Yeah, I think it's because we were both unfiltered, which is one of the metrics, I think, of an excellent podcast.
Yeah.
When people go unfiltered, or as former Prime Minister of Britain likes to say, unleashed in his
unleashed. Yeah, I like that. So last time you visited, it was after your book was coming out, Accelerated Minds. And we had just the best conversation, and we were talking a little bit offline. You've I won't say pivoted, but pivoted just a little bit in what you're doing, where now you're not just writing books, you're helping to publish them.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I stumbled into, as I often do, into a business partnership with my own publisher, Ken White, and we started a sister companion press, the Experts imprint of Sutherland House. It's called Sutherland House Experts, and I scavenge the world for experts with several decades of experience in a particular field who want to translate their expertise for a broad international audience. And boy, am I ever learning a ton. It's a labor of love, focusing on mind, body, spirit books, health books in particular.
What made you choose that realm?
I felt it was really important to amplify the voices of what I call quiet experts. Okay, so these are people who are experts in, as you know, Kumar Murthy, revered mathematician and philosopher, just came out with the first book under our imprint about ancient Indian philosophy.
It's so good too. That I'm not finished with it yet. I'm about probably 2/3 through it, but it is so good.
It's a wonder of a book. And for those who don't know, The Science of Human Possibilities is a book about how to find your innermost talents that you may not know you have. So in my own case, I felt that this was an important niche. Older authors, median age is probably about 56. Authors with a few decades under their belt.
Some life experience.
Yeah, tend to be a little quieter. There's a lot of loud voices, if you've noticed recently. Dominating.
A nice way to put
it. Online and offline. And so I felt, hey, I'm at that stage of life where I can afford to do something new and different. And look, I've always been passionate about the world of ideas, and there's some extraordinary ideas out there to solve some wicked problem sets that we need to address.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the fact that you'd written a book that was really to help people, helping entrepreneurs and people that are trying to start, a business or an endeavor, and it was terrific. And now you're with a publishing group that's doing similar things. You're giving voice to some of these, which I love the term quiet expert. That's really good. But you're giving a voice, and their stuff is helping people. It's not like it's and there's nothing. I'm a reader. I love to read for entertainment. But when you can read and you're entertained and you're learning things or getting something out of it, I think that's a great combination. And that's the whole thing with your publishing group. It's all about that.
Yeah, and there's an entrepreneurial lens to it too, right? So I'm an entrepreneur. My books are about entrepreneurship. My next one blends youth, mental health, and entrepreneurship. And so in this business model, it's a hybrid business model, but we've got skin in the game. So if we put marketing dollars in, we put a lot of effort in. The authors invest some money. Their investments go down if they hit certain milestones together. So we're really all in it together. I treat each book like a mini business, basically. And in that process, trying to bring some other innovations to the fore. We're trying to really make the commerce of books a little more sensible. Books are really, really important. Like I've been in the world of ideas and media for a long time in books, and it's really through books and the narrative that you can shape through a book that you can transcend all the noise with social media and prosecute a narrative that can find its way around the world. It's really, really hard to do that. You've got a lot of competition, but we're bringing some elements to the table that we think are going to differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, and I like that. Tell me about some of the elements, and how is it different? How is your model different for, like, let's say I've got a book that I'm wanting to put out there, self-help book of some type. How is me partnering with you different than me going with traditional publisher?
Yeah, there's a few ways. I mean, so traditional publishers are. The model is you maybe get 8 to 12% in royalties. You may get an advance, and so the royalties are against that advance. Most advances don't earn out, and they're really, really tiny these days. So the economics of that tend to only really work out if you're kind of Stephen King or
right. You have like a bestseller.
Yeah, or you're an established name. Right. Now, ours are established experts in their field, but they're not really known often beyond their field. So they have a platform and an audience. And so given that, right, we build in marketing. So just in terms of the ROI of the marketing investment, making sure people hear about your books and you get, on alternative media, traditional media, you get out there in terms of differentiators. Essentially, it's a profit share. So you'll make a high royalty or percentage off every book sold, and even higher if you hit certain milestones. So we're really both in skin in the game to make it work. We're also different, of course, because we're really specializing in experts and then positioning our brand. So kind of somewhere between the university presses and the what's often referred to as the hybrid presses. And then at the same time, the other differentiator is we're a companion press to an established major publisher of nonfiction books, Sutherland House. So you've got a range of marketing and advantages. We're highly selective. I'm a hard driver. I got to tell you, I'm very sensitive to making sure the quality of every book is exceptional.
Yeah.
This is really important to me.
Well, it's probably important too, trying to establish a new company. You know, especially early on, you can't afford too many duds. You got to have good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And so and part of it involves a lot of market research in understanding momentum of certain subcategories of books, what resonates, even down to the color hue, the book design. I mean, it's really interesting in this day and age. I mean, there's a big myth, right? People sort of confuse media and books a lot, and they'll say, "Oh, you know, the media industry is suffering and very challenged economically." That's certainly true. There's some really innovative new business models for media coming out these days. However, it's different with books. I mean, books are everlasting. There's a passionate demand for books and nonfiction books. There's a powerful book of readers out there that are always reading. The challenge, of course, is just making sure that you compete to get those eyeballs against everyone else. But there's just some extraordinary work being produced right now.
I love the idea because it's kind of you're like an in between step from a self publisher. You know, so the author's got some skin in it, not just writing the book, but they've got a little bit of an investment. But then the potential rewards much better for them. Plus, they get your expertise as far as marketing the book, which if you're self-publishing, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, the way I discovered this opportunity is because when I was writing my last book under a traditional model, it was about entrepreneurial mental health, as you know. And what I learned is that the author, the writer, is your quintessential entrepreneur. Like if you look at an entrepreneur, you're building a product to solve a problem. Okay. Right. You're putting yourself out there. My goodness, for the world to see. It's very risky, as you know, doing an entrepreneurial endeavor. You've got to meet various market tests of success, right? You got to get people to pay attention. You got to get people to buy your book. Build into your story. The reality is, no matter who you are, even if you're Stephen King, you're doing a lot of the marketing on your own. So I'm seeing all these authors act like entrepreneurs, and I'm going, okay, let's create a business model that matches the personality types of authors, quintessential entrepreneurs. And I even now teach a course at the University of Toronto, where I'm based, called "The Writer is Entrepreneur." Because I was so taken with this, right? And so then I, started thinking about this. And if you think back to many of the great writers in history, many of them have entrepreneurial tenets. I mean, maybe you know them. They're certainly risk takers.
Well, for sure. Yeah. Well, and it's such a, writing anything is such an endeavor with that. So, I mean, you gotta really be in it to make it. And a lot of people do that as far as getting it on paper, which is an accomplishment, but then they don't know what to do with it. So, you have all these really good subject books and nobody's reading them because the author has no idea what to do with them. And it's difficult to find a company to help you publish it. So you end up trying to self-publish, and that's very difficult.
Yeah, you're hitting on two challenges there. So you're finding the right publisher, which is always a challenge. I always say the most important part of a publisher, the most important element of a publisher with any author that's pitching me on a book, is to find a publisher who really believes in you, believes in your story. Because no matter how well known, established the brand is, or how respected the publisher is, unless they have your back, unless they really care about your story and what you're trying to do, then you just become kind of, second tier, third tier, and you're not boosted, which is a phrase I hear in the industry. The second problem you're hitting on is what's called book discovery. And this is like the $1 billion problem in, not just books, let's call it ideas discovery. There's ideas and books floating in the ecosystem everywhere. 2 years, like before ChatGPT, right? There were 11,000 traditionally published English language books every month in North America. And then you loop in, self-published books, hybrid published,
a lot of books,
getting into 100, 200,000 books maybe a month. And then on top of that, now you've got AI generated books, right? So how many books are we having published every year? Is it 3 million? I'm not sure.
It's a lot.
And it's a lot. And so what we've got to do is we've got to have a system which makes it fairer and more commercially sensible for the author or entrepreneur and the publisher, as opposed to just Amazon taking all the winnings, right? And we've also got to have a kind of a market test of success that goes beyond what a very small subset of people writes on Goodreads, which, by the way, is owned by Amazon, tells us are the books that we should read. I kind of call it the book publicity cartel. It says, okay, these are the books that matter. These are the ideas that matter. Yeah. Well, meanwhile, there's these incredible books and talents sort of languishing out there, and it's my job to find them.
Yeah. Well, so how do you go about that? When you're like, all right, I'm going to go looking, how do you do that? Where do you start?
It's a non-scientific process with elements of science. So, for example, the authors that I tend to work with best are sort of people like me. I call them mutts, right? So I often say there's moles. My dad was a mole. He was a scientist trained on finding something very, very tiny in the brain and then developing a bunch of drugs around it. My mother was a mapper, right? She would map kind of ideas in psychiatry to different fields. And I'm a mutt. So moles, mappers, and mutts are sort of curious about everything.
Yeah.
So the thing about mutts, and I suspect you're a mutt, just based on... I
was going to say, this sounds familiar.
And by the way, I do not have a dog. I know nothing about dogs, but I like to use this analogy. The thing about mutts is we tend to find each other, right? And then so I work best with these mutts who are demonstrable experts in their field. So that sort of makes the first cut. They tend to be interested in a lot of things. They tend generally to have written something already. They tend to have ideas down on paper. So they've passed that first threshold. And then we have a discussion. And it's really important for us to get along because the editing publishing process is a very highly intimate process in the sense that you're telling stories untold that are often very vulnerable stories. Like my books, I want them to be books of connectivity and authenticity, books for the world. And in order to achieve that, you have to tell very personal stories. You have to have a publisher who believes in you, trusts you, right? And you have to have that intimate relationship. So all of these things are such that they've got to be people I really get along with. They get along with me, and it's very collaborative, so that we trust one another. Because inevitably, there's going to be mistakes along the way, and you got to forgive and understand. So that's sort of my algorithm. It's not scientific. Maybe it'll become more scientific as we go on.
So I know we talked a little bit about Dr. Murdy, but have you learned things from some of the books that you've published? Have you started using some of the things from the books?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I mean, I like learning from everyone. With whom I interact at the university, in the book world, elsewhere. I mean, in the case of Kumar Murthy's book, The Science of Human Possibilities, about how you use Vedanta philosophy to find your innermost talents. Yes, I mean, I always want to be in a receptive mind to learn. He laughed at me the other day. Because I took a big. I took this. It's a laboratory notebook that my father had given me. Gave me lots of these, and I took this to a talk because that's one of the lessons. You've got to when you go to a talk, you got to take notes because that's the way you learn. And so anyway, so lessons certainly from him. Forthcoming book from Eldon Sprickerhoff, great, iconic.
I know. I'm so excited to talk with Eldon, and we keep missing each other. So
he's giving keynote talks around the world.
Yeah, I know. I'll get him soon, though. Yeah,
and really, when I read his book and went through the process there, I said, my goodness, I wish I had known these things when I set off on my journey of entrepreneurship many years ago, many decades ago, because so much of it is about just sustaining yourself, survivability, and very much aligned with the themes in my last book. And then we have a number of other books coming out. Tony Sanfilippo's book about how to fix the crisis in family medicine, former sort of dean of medicine at a medical school. Then we have Sheila Whitaker's book forthcoming. She's a great, renowned, revered businesswoman, broke glass ceilings, and she's talking about looking at feminism in a new way, and how, like, reminiscing back and thinking about, okay, how did I get through that glass ceiling, and what lessons to these next generations. And so all of these books, look, there's so many, all of these books, I try to take away, okay, what can I learn? And I think in the process, it's interesting too, because I learn about how to pitch the book. We've got a book forthcoming on tax policy, which is intensely interesting. Like, people don't realize, by Carrie Harnish, a tax expert, like, people don't realize how much tax policy affects them every single day in terms of the social policies that we want, all that stuff. So a lot of these things, gives me added curiosity about the world, affects certainly the research I do.
It kind of makes you want to get all of them, all the authors, in a room like a think tank and see what you can come up with.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that ad hoc. We do, and we do that, and it's a good idea. I mean, I think part of the reason we do that is because it's communal, right? We're sharing ideas and sharing war stories about how to write, how to get what's called bum in seat, right? The diligence of every day, just writing down your ideas. And then sometimes it's about learnings, like, for example, one really interesting learning that I had for my book, and I've since learned that it's very common, is you often don't know who the audience will be for your book. Like, you think it's going to be one thing and it's something else. So my book, Accelerated Minds, I thought that the core audience for that book was going to be entrepreneurial, like men, basically, over 50. I mean, for a bunch of reasons, that's what I thought, based on what are called comparables in the industry. But then what I discovered is that there were two groups that were my major readers and enthusiasts. Number one were teenagers, between like 16 and kind of like, and then like early 20s.
See, that one doesn't surprise me, because that's the age where they're wanting to get into something, but a lot of them don't really know exactly how to do that. So I could totally see why they would.
They've told me a few reasons. Like, one is that exactly. Second is a lot of, like, entrepreneurship is something they hear a lot about, but they don't, and they want to be entrepreneurs to the extent they know about it. And TV shows like Shark Tank have popularized entrepreneurship. The third reason, I think, is because for young people, mental health has been destigmatized, so they're okay talking about it, right? So it sort of makes sense. The second audience that was really interesting, okay, and I'd say actually third audience, but new immigrants to North America, new immigrant entrepreneurs, and female entrepreneurs, okay? Those
are nice surprises to have.
Yeah. So here's the thing about all of them, and this is my mantra. Okay, like, I believe fundamentally that what binds all entrepreneurs of a good type together, not all entrepreneurs, because you know the type that are what I call fast money entrepreneurs.
Right.
But other than those kind of folks, and we all know them, right? Entrepreneurs hate bullies, right? And so much of what we do is we're trying to come up with solutions that are going to democratize, make things a little fairer, fight the bullies, right? And so what was interesting to me is that a lot of new immigrant entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, they've been bullied, right? Like, they have these bully experiences, and that was something that resonated.
Are they being bullied by, like, other entrepreneurs or other people in the industry they're trying to go into?
Not other entrepreneurs. In fact, entrepreneurship is where they find that bond of community. Gotcha. It tends to be in the traditional workplace, or in the investor community, not
But
your.
don't you think, and you're one yourself, but most people that think a little different for however it is, whatever reason, if maybe they're artistic, maybe they have that drive to try new things, whatever it is, they tend to be looked at negatively at times, especially in the workplace, because they don't always just conform to the traditional, you go in, you do the job, you just do what you're told type of thing, because they've got ideas. They're trying to get those out there. And I could see where maybe that causes them some issues in a normal workforce, which that's like, and I've said that, I think we talked last time. I came from call centers. I spent a couple decades doing that. And that was my biggest complaint, is when you allow people to be creative, to stretch, responsibility wise, that's when you really can accomplish some things. But most businesses don't do that. They try to put everybody into the same box.
Yeah, I bring it down to the individual manager. So much of it, this is all about individuals. You can, within any company, right? You can have an extraordinary manager who gives you free reign to be entrepreneurial within even a huge company.
Right.
I was very grateful when I was at IBM, for example. I had an entrepreneur who did give me, entrepreneurially minded manager, gave me free reign in that respect, or some. Yeah, I think it really varies on the individual. You want to have, I say to our kids, and I say to people just generally, you want to surround yourself by people whom you can learn from, and employers. And when you work with employers, they give you free reign. And I generally find that entrepreneur founders tend to be more correlated with employers than not. And all I mean by that is that they're people who give you room to be yourself and to experiment. Because look, in order to get where they were, they had to do that, right?
Right.
So yeah, it does depend, right? Like, you can be an entrepreneur in an entrepreneurial environment, even if it's a large company. But yeah, I have certainly experienced personally people looking at me askew, not only for not conforming in terms of ideas, but also for being like a mutt, right? Like, being interested in so many different things, where we're in a society that is a little bit antiquated, frankly, that thinks, like, culturally, we still think of career paths as being linear. But that's absurd.
You're right.
It really is, right? Like, in this new world of AI, we're so close to it, we don't realize how disruptive and revolutionary the environment we're in is. And in this world, like, we're going to be ship-shaping, like, so many times. The number of bubbles that we've had in the last 10, 15 years, and bubbles and drops, is astonishing. And so I don't think we realize just how sort of, let's just say, changeable the modern environment is, such that mutts, I believe, are going to be the people that will thrive in the new economy that's coming forward. We just have to be kinder to them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And there's so much changing, especially with our younger generations. A lot of them no longer are looking at college as a career, like going to college to learn a particular career. A lot of them are going straight into an industry out of high school and doing fine. Now, personally, I still see a lot of value with the college education, but I'm open-minded enough to see where a lot of people don't necessarily need that. And then you've got this young group; they've got their own ideas. They've grown up with technology that a lot of us didn't have till later in life, so they're kind of ingrained with that. They're not scared of AI like some of us were a little nervous about it. They're not. They'll take those risks, and they're very more open, more diverse. There's, to me, I know a lot of people get upset with the younger generations. I'm kind of hopeful because I think there's some changes coming that are going to make us more agile, I guess would be the right word. We're going to be able to navigate some of these new technologies, new jobs that are coming in, and it's going to be driven by these younger people that, to them, it's not a big deal. They're so used to it, they just kind of go with the flow. Us older generation, most of us struggle with that.
Yeah, look, we're in a tremendously exciting time. I'm of the view that learning law, I was trained as a lawyer, never practiced. Learning law and a whole range of skill sets, not becoming a world-class expert, but certainly learning the rudiments of a whole wide range of things we call professions today, is going to be the equivalent of downloading an app and taking the course, every day, and getting better at it. The whole sort of concept of what we associate with careers is going to change. I mean, it's just the threshold of what it takes to become knowledgeable about something is just a lot lower. I mean, yes, of course, am I worried about misinformation and all of these other things? Yeah. Goodness, I mean, I built a whole company around misinformation, the way online misinformation flows around the world. But I am way more excited about the speed and efficiency with which new ideas can come to light. And in fact, our biases can even be challenged. I was looking at a huge data set the other day and using an AI-based analysis of this massive data set. Actually, it was about work patterns. But in that context, it gave me questions that I had not even considered when I fed it some of my hypotheses. And so, we're at I use baseball analogies too, by the way, and I don't play nor do I watch baseball. But I think we're not even in the first inning of this revolution, and it's what I'm seeing is mind-boggling. And I remember I was in the early days as an investor in the early days of the commercial web in 1996, and I remember how exciting that was. But now, the time that we're in right now, my goodness, at least 50 times more exciting.
Isn't that crazy? I was having that conversation earlier today. If you look at the last 50 years and how much technology has come in that time period, and every time we're like, amazing, and then a year later it's something new, and it just keeps accelerating. And so now, there's so much out there and so much that we're kind of scratching the surface of, so it's probably coming. It's exciting, but I can also see where, especially with older people, it can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from really, but I mean, my bias is always toward the opportunity, and my bias is often away from people who are concerned and worried about any new technology. And I define technology down. So what we're doing right now, this is technology. I mean, It's extraordinary what we're doing. I mean, think about it. I mean, you're a small shop. I'm a small shop. Here we are. We're having an extraordinary conversation at rate. I mean, the cost of this in 1996 would have been extraordinary.
Right.
And then you guys, you're in the top 100 podcasts, and you've shot up in popularity and surge.
We're surprised too.
Yeah, you're surprised. I'm not so surprised in your case, by the way. But what I'm telling you is that this is technology, and technology is more than OpenAI. Like OpenAI, okay, that's advanced technology with a whole range of extraordinary things. It's not Elon Musk and his rockets. Technology is business model innovation. Like how do we bust up traditional media and have this alternative media conversation right here and change hearts and minds because of it. And so that's what I'm tremendously excited. Oftentimes these really low tech innovations can really be game changing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I love the fact that Accelerated Minds surprised you with the audience that that it gained. That doesn't surprise me because it's such a good, helpful, well-written book. But I love the fact that you're reaching people that you weren't expecting to reach. That's terrific. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you're working on some other books, but any plans to take, Accelerated Minds and kind of write something along those lines, like not a sequel, but continuing the thought process?
Yeah, I mean, my next book is on it's an unusual way of thinking and looking at youth mental health, and but looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective, looking at it from the perspective of what entrepreneurial youth mental health initiatives are telling us what works. And so it's a pretty research intensive book, but it's going to be simple, I hope, in terms of how it flows. So I guess that is the sequel, and it was informed by what I learned, right? Like it was informed by the fact of learning that so many young people are entrepreneurial in orientation, as I define entrepreneurial, risk taking, wanting to build lasting solutions to old problems with new ideas, and so that is that I suppose could be seen as a sequel.
Yeah, I kind of love the teen angle, and it's we're raising generations now that are having issues, especially the kind of the mental type of issues that we didn't necessarily have, growing up. We may have had some of that and didn't realize exactly what was going on, but there's so many different varieties now. Some of them can be a negative, some of them can be a positive if the person is nurtured correctly, because a lot of those kind of the autism type of issues that people are having can be helpful if you can get past some of the social difficulties, because it tends to have, we view a lot of that in the negative, but they tend to come with both. It has some negative to it, but there's some positives there. You just have to look into that. Or does the new book kind of touch on some of that?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't written it, but those are good ideas. I mean, we often talk in entrepreneurial circles about how things like neurodivergence, things like this has all been proven in the literature, right? Like, despite the fact that entrepreneurs have much elevated rates of bipolar, suicide, depression, a whole range of things. There's also way higher rates of what are called openness to new experience and creativity, and a whole range of other things that are sort of like the superpower that entrepreneurs have. So yeah, to your point, if it's channeled in the right direction, it can be extraordinary. And so how do you build those protective forces around you? A lot of it is about people. It's also about keeping toxic people out of your life. Entrepreneurs have a tendency to go down a rabbit hole, like a mental health rabbit hole, when someone toxic is winding into their life, and is a barrier between what they're trying to do and results. So it's about building a kind of a team.
I think it would be really interesting to take kind of those principles and the things that you've written about and are writing about, to take all that and to start a company, you're kind of doing that with the publisher, to start it doesn't matter what industry, just start it, but based around those type principles, and just see what comes out of it. I have a feeling that at the end of it, it'd be a different company than what you were expecting when you started.
Yeah, and a lot of young people are doing that, right? Like we talked about purpose-minded companies about 10 years ago, but really what's happening now with a lot of young ventures is they're from day one, they are mental health focused. They're devoting. They've signed pledges in many cases to and investors to devoting resources to mental health supports, to putting mental health on an equal plane to physical health. So we've kind of achieved a lot in the last. I say we. I mean, it's a massive.
We've at least gotten rid of some of the stigma behind it.
Yeah, 100%, right? Because in entrepreneurship, you're supposed to be, for goodness sake, you're supposed to be a superhero and all that. And oftentimes that's not the case, right? So anyway, so that trend is occurring. It's one exciting thing that I'm starting to see in entrepreneurship. I'm very excited by how on, just like at a much smaller scale with just one or two other people, you can do nowadays at the tech level what you needed to have 20 or 30 people to do, a few years ago. And the costs of things that were tens of millions of dollars or more are now, maybe not tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, but the scale just with the type of computing power, the type of generative AI solutions that are out there, just the nature of how we can take big data sets to drive innovation. All of these things, I think, are incredibly inspiring. And the younger generation, and I'm talking really young people, 16, 21, starting companies, mind-blowing companies, tackling the most urgent problems of our time, poverty.
Don't you think that some of that, what's driving that with the younger generation is they're looking at the jobs that are out there, especially in the service industry, and they're going, I don't want to do that for that type of pay. I don't want to do that. So they're looking for things where they can be kind of in charge and have a little more control over what they're doing.
The survey data definitely bear that out, right? Like we know that so much, and COVID, I mean, illuminated this clearly, right? Like so much of what is shaping the destiny of young people is to have more control over their economic future. A lot of young people today who are in their teens or a little older, right? Like they saw their parents who are in their 50s, go through the 2008 economic turmoil, lose their jobs, their careers after decades of devoted service, and they sort of question this whole idea. Wait a second, I thought the big employer was supposed to be loyal to.
Right, they're not.
And that sort of sense of, so they're seeing that at the same time as they're seeing the opportunity set widen, and so I think these things are coming together in a really exciting path.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Is working in publishing, has that made it easier on you to sit down and write, or more difficult?
Well, I mean, Mike, I mean, for me, look, I'm always writing. I mean, I'm always writing. I mean, I'm writing. I write poetry. I write.
I'd like to read some of your poetry.
There's
you
a
can
phrase.
Put a book out there.
I once had an editor who told me, the thing is, Neil, writers write. That's just what we do. It doesn't matter if you're byline, you got books, you're just always writing. So I'm always writing, but I just wear many different hats of that writing. Some of it's academic, some of it's poetry, some of it's this kind of nonfiction that we're talking about. And then at the same time, as I'm digesting ideas from other faculty here at the University of Toronto or from other authors, I'm trying to incorporate their ideas too. I'm trying to think and reflect on them. Okay, what does that mean for what I'm trying to write? I'm always, learning from people. That's the key, right? It's the key. I mean, I'm sure in your situation, though, Mike, I mean, you must have learned from someone. Like, did you have a mentor that got you into an entrepreneurial lane, or did you?
You talking about with the podcasting stuff?
Yeah, in particular.
Well, in our case, we, my son and I, we just jumped in. We did a little bit of research on the equipment, not much, and we just kind of trial and errored it. And one thing that I think that we did well, even when the quality of the podcast wasn't very good, was we never tried to hide the struggles. So we were very open about, what we were going through. Yeah, this, our picture quality is not very good, or at one time we didn't even have video. We don't have video, but I think just being upfront about what we were working on, this is coming. This is, we were operating out of a bedroom, but we were working on getting a studio. We'd kind of just put that out there, and that tended to help us. Now, I've made friends that are also podcasters that were having similar struggles, and talking with them helped as far as staying motivated while we were working through it. But we really didn't have someone to kind of lead us through that. That's why it's been such a surprise that it went anywhere.
Yeah, it's neat. It's like an interesting entrepreneurial podcast ecosystem of supporting people. That's interesting. My experience with podcasting is at the company I started when I was CEO. Reweave data firm. I ran a few podcasts. I called them the Quiet Voices podcasts.
I like them.
I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed it. And so now now when I come up with that phrase "quiet experts," it's actually directly attributable to that language. So I was sort of inspired by that. But I absolutely love podcasts. I love the medium of podcasting. I think it surprised all of us that it would take off with the excitement that it has over the last several years. I mean,
it's really opened up doors for a lot of people, and a lot of people have gotten famous doing podcasting or social media that maybe never would have been noticed otherwise. And I kind of love that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's neat from an ideas publisher perspective. It's really neat. Like, you can get more yield for an author or an ideas person being on your show than you can be getting a glowing book review in a major traditional media outlet, because everything's changed, right? Like,
it's all about getting the eyes on it, or the ears.
It's about the eyes and the right experts, right? So if Mike Wall says, "Hey, that's a book you got to read," or that's a guy or gal you gotta speak with, then you pass that market test. That is, really in many ways the new New York Times test, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I also love the fact that you're similar to me in that you want to work with interesting, kind people. You want to work with good people, and so you tend to
most important thing, Mike. I mean, really. I mean, and that's one of the beauties of entrepreneurship, is that you can work with people you admire and you like. Oftentimes, in other environments, you're thrown up with folks that who knows, that can be bullies or hostile. But no. I mean, look, you reach a certain age, you reach a certain comfort level where you just really want to work.
You want to be happy.
Yeah, you want to be happy, and you want to make sure that people around you are happy as well.
Right.
So it's important in that respect, and supportive. So I'm with you. We of course both share the hair follicle. I thought that's where you were going. Actually,
we could totally go
to me.
Well, so the question I have for you is, when in the 80s, I had 80s hair. I had the kind of more of, I had like, you may know this reference. Most people don't. I had like Sean Cassidy hair.
Right.
So I'd feather it back, and it was, went down to my shoulders. It was up there, but I hated it. It took so long to fool with. I just couldn't stand it. And I'm convinced that at some point it just went, all right, we're out.
That's hilarious. Goodness.
It's so much easier to take care of, though.
Yeah. And these days they have really innovative shavers. But look, I mean, like we're in a new time, we're in a new era, and I think what I'm really excited about with respect to podcasting specifically, and all alternative media, is actually the business model surrounding it. Like, I think, and I've been talking with fintech providers. I don't know if you have, recently, and
yeah.
there's a lot of interesting new innovations around how people pay for online content, which is really revolutionary. Like, you know, as you know, like advertising technology is the historical accident. That's in terms of what powers the internet today, right? Like
Right.
it's a bunch of reasons. And so I think that's all changing, which is
Well,
another.
nobody watches commercials anymore. So you have to find a way to connect with people outside of the, just blasting them with a 30-second or a minute commercial.
Yeah, so that's sort of really exciting to me too, as the fintech takes off. And I don't want to suggest the banks are going to crumble, but the banks are probably going to embrace this too, right? And I think the future of micropayments holds a lot of exciting potential for content creators in different ways than ever before. So another reason why I think the entrepreneurial economy, the gig economy, is going to continue to thrive.
Yeah, agree. And Neil, thank you for taking some more time with us. I hope we get to let's make it a trilogy. And when you finish the next book, let's do it again.
Okay, incentive. That's a great incentive. Thank you.
No, it's been terrific, Neil. You were one of my favorite interviews the last time, and it's only gotten better this time.
Thank you. I really enjoy this. As I say, free reign, unfettered, unleashed.
That's right.
Only with you.
So before I let you go, where can we find out more about Sutherland Publishing?
Yeah, I mean, Sutherland House Experts.com. You can Google me, Neil Seeman. You can Google the press. We've got Instagram presence, LinkedIn presence. But at the end of the day, and hey, AI too. You can learn about us on your favorite LLM tool. How do we fit into the world of publishing? How are we different? How is Sutherland House Experts different than the rest?
Well, and we've been talking about Accelerated Minds quite a bit. If they're interested in that book, where can they go?
Yeah, Accelerated Minds. Again, you can get it at any bookstore and libraries, and anywhere around the world. Actually, certainly online, Amazon, and at SutherlandHouse.com. So, that book was, it was a venture unto itself. Learned a lot about myself and about the world of entrepreneurship and how it's changing. So I'm really, really happy in terms of how that went down.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can tell you, I think that my son that does the hard stuff for the podcast, he's a children's librarian.
Oh, so wow.
He has made sure that yours and Kumar's books are in the Putnam County Library here in West Virginia.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, goodness. I mean, Kumar's book should be mandatory in every county library. Wow. That's
yeah. They've got a little section there for Brett's picks. So a lot of his picks come from the podcast. So yeah,
that's
Kumar's
really
both.
Cool. That's really cool. No, good to hear it.
I mean, there's nothing to me, like, not that I'm an author, but if I was, walking into just a random bookstore or a library somewhere when you're vacationing or something and seeing something you've written, I mean, that's a pretty good rush. Yeah,
actually, it reminds me of what happened with my late mother. Is she had written a book? She had written a book about schizophrenia, which is a major debilitating illness. But it became really popular. And so when I was for families, and so when I was young, I got a thrill ride out of going into bookstores, finding the book, and no matter where I was, and then secretly putting it in the bestseller stash or whatever. Anyway, that was my fun times as a teenager.
That's a good idea. I think I've seen that on like a 90s sitcom, where the guy, he's written a book and he goes to all the bookstores and is putting them on the shelf and stuff, and they end up chasing him out of the bookstore. Stop coming to me.
I'm sure it's happened.
All right, Neil, hold on one second. I'm such a fan of Neil Seeman. Hope you enjoyed that. It's the second time he's been on the show, and he's just outstanding. I love his approach just to life. He's out there. He's curious. When something strikes him that he's interested in, he just dives in. I absolutely love that. And he loves to share information. I mean, he loves to learn. He loves to share what he has learned. I love people like that. Just the nicest guy, and talented. I know he's done a lot more than just writing. He's a talented writer. Sure, he's terrific at everything he does. He just strikes me as one of those people, talented writer. Reminds me a lot of my wife, Emily, who I talk about all the time on here. Just constantly looking for ways to improve themselves, to help other people, to just gain knowledge. That's exactly the type of person that she is. She's been working with Live Nation now for 25 years. Started out with Ticketmaster, where she worked for me. I was I was the assistant call center director, and she was an agent in the call center. But you couldn't stop or contain her talent, and she has just continued to grow. She left the call centers, joined corporate with Live Nation. Now she's the VP of global compliance, and I'm sure still has a couple of promotions coming. But all of her career, and she'd tell you that, is based on the fact of you treat people good, you learn as much as you can, you stay positive, you spread joy as much as you can, and if you learn something, you share it. And unfortunately, with the struggles that I've been having lately, I've been very open with the fact that I'm dealing with new diagnosis of Parkinson's. Along with that, I'm struggling sometimes forming my thoughts, which is new to me, not entirely new, but a little bit new. And I get my mind, the way it's working, I'm still learning, shifts directions on me in mid thought, so that sometimes I lose the thread of what I was trying to get across, and that happened a few times in the episode. But hopefully Neil was able to piece that together with that, because I love how he handles everything, the way he approaches his business, going through his life. It really does remind me of Emily as well. They're artistic, they're talented, they're adjustable, they're opportunistic. They tend to see big picture. When a lot of people have trouble looking top down, they look top down, middle in, down, up, everything. They see all of it, and helps them form a big picture, and also to anticipate what's coming down the road. I tend to surround myself with those type of people, because I'm not necessarily like that. I mean, a little bit maybe, but not to that extent. So I surround myself with those type of people, and that helps me. Helps carry me along. I hope some of that made sense. Neil always gets my head spinning in a good way. He really gets me thinking about a lot of different things. If you would like to learn more, you can check out Sutherland Publishing. There are some terrific books. I'm probably going to do a playlist just with his authors, because we've had a couple on there and more coming. So I may just do a Sutherland's Publishing playlist, so you can see all of them. Neil's book, Accelerated Minds, do yourself a favor, especially if you have any interest in entrepreneurship. Check out Accelerated Minds. It's excellent. It'll definitely, promise, it'll help you out. If you're finding us for the first time, thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much. There's a couple easy ways you can support us, and I would really appreciate them if you could do that. They're free. Doesn't cost you anything. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Please subscribe. Those subscriptions really help us when we, thankfully the podcast is in a position now. Most of our guests are sent to us. We've developed those relationships where we don't have to go searching for guests. But when we do, it helps us to have those subscriptions, and we can kind of use that as a way to say this is the audience we can bring if you would like to come on the show. So YouTube, MeisterCon Pod, please subscribe. Our website's meistercon.com. You can find right now 860 episodes, audio and video versions. If we're doing anything in studio, for covering a convention, if we're going on location, anything we have going on, be on the website, meistercon.com. Lastly, IMDb, and Neil kind of alluded to it a few times. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, named us a top 100 podcast. I'm flabbergasted, thrilled, humbled, all of that. Millions and millions. I think the last count was like 15, 16 million podcasts growing daily to be named to anybody's top 100 list. Such a thrill. So grateful. But the way you can help, and it's free, if you go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast. That's all you got to do. Just bringing up our page really does help us out, having that traffic on the page. Also, while you're there, you can see all of I think we're closing in on 1,000 guests, and you can see all of those listed on our IMDb page. Though there's some names there that I guarantee you're a fan of. You'll want to listen to the interviews. Thank you guys so much. Till next time. Bye, everybody.